This is the Real Estate Investing Abundance Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. I just want to take a moment to introduce you to our company, Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital is a real estate investment firm. If you'd like to learn more about real estate investing, head over to our website, steedtalker.com. And while you're there, take a moment to get your one-page guide to the 10 steps to passive real estate investing. Downloading this PDF will also enroll you in our Enlightened Investor Circle, and by enrolling in the Enlightened Investor Circle, you'll be the first to know about any new investment opportunities that we are getting involved with. Look forward to hearing from you. Enjoy today's show. Hello, enlightened investors. Welcome back to Real Estate Investing Abundance. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. We're going to take a really interesting look today at investing with our wallet and also with our heart. Maria Zondervan is the founder and CEO of Blue Vikings Capital. She began investing in real estate in 1996, and in her 25 plus years of investing, she has worked everything from standard single-family houses to apartment complexes to hotels. Maria's current focus is on recession-resistant value-add apartments and 100-plus room hotels that are well-positioned to be converted to affordable workforce housing. Maria now turns much of her attention to helping others build their wealth through real estate investing. Welcome, Maria, and take us into the show and share a memorable experience that helped you to be who you are today.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate you having me on your show. Memorable experience. Well, so this is completely non-real estate related, but I guess the best memories I have from growing up are camping with my grandparents. They were really outdoors people, and that actually led me to become a endangered species wildlife biologist, which was not in your bio there, and it's certainly not real estate related, but that's kind of where I started. But I think I realized early on that although that's where my passion was, I would never make any good money working for the state as a biologist, right? So I started investing in real estate along the side with that. So I actually started investing even back in college because I wanted to be able to follow my passion, but I also knew I'd need money to support myself and my family. So
well, I think a lot of us find ourselves in that situation with a passion that doesn't have a very clear road to at least building wealth the way that we would like to do it. So I'm glad you're here with us to share that journey from developing your passion in biodiversity. You actually spent, 25 plus years in the field of biodiversity, while at the same time developing wealth for your family through commercial real estate investing. So, Maria, just take us down that journey briefly. Where did you get started and why did you get started with real estate?
Well, yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing about real estate is if you do it right, it can be rather passive. So you can do it along anything else that you're passionate about. And my whole life's kind of been about following your passions. So, a lot of passion for endangered species and wildlife. So I committed a lot of time to that. Then later I had, and again, like I said, I started doing that real estate investing long before I had a family or anything like that. And little did I know that how important that would become, because when I finally did have a child, my first son, Carl, he's got autism. So no one plans for a special needs child, but all of a sudden money became more important, right? Although I hope he can get a job at some point and do okay, his financial future is uncertain, to say the least, right? So that became even more so. And as he became closer to adulthood and that reality sunk in more, it became even more pressing upon me to maybe make sure to really grow that nest egg for him, as well as for my other son, so the burden doesn't fall on him to take care of his brother. So at some point I made the leap from the passion of wildlife into real estate full time because I became very passionate about that.
From what I understand, you were actually a college student when you got your first investment property without any money down through a lease option. Is that correct?
Yes, you've done your homework.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, I mean, it came about from, late night infomercials.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, up late studying, had the TV kind of just drone in the background, and it caught my attention. It was Carlton Sheets, for those who've been in real estate a long time. He was sort of the guru back then, and he sold this real estate investment with no money down course that you actually bought on cassette tape. So yes, I'm dating myself here, folks. I still have it, actually. It's on my shelf right next to me. And there's 16 cassette tapes. I could actually take them out and show them to you. But I thought, this can't be real. Like, how can you buy all this real estate with nothing down? But you really could. Nothing down is exactly what I had as a college student. So it was the book money I had for the next semester that I spent on the course, just to tell you, where my head was at the time. So I spent the little bit of money I had for books. I spent that on this course, but it certainly paid off.
Well, that is very interesting that you were saying to yourself, this can't be true, and yet you went ahead and purchased this course at the expense of maybe not being able to get your textbooks for the next semester. So what provoked you to do that?
I don't know. I honestly can't think back to my 22-year-old brain. It's hard to do at this point. I just knew that I wanted to follow passion. I knew that was passion that didn't produce money, but I knew money was necessary to live. So although I had no aspirations at the time of being super wealthy or anything like this, it was just I wanted to make sure I could afford to do what I wanted to along my passion route, because I had friends who were biologists in very remote areas, deep into the African safaris and such, living in tents, barely making enough money to put food on the table, but loving every minute of it. And I say, I like the first parts of that, but I also like food. And, I was already a broke college student living on ramen noodles and cucumbers, I think, at the time. So just kind of want to make sure I wasn't always going to be in that situation.
Well, it's one thing to get a course and to go through the course, and then it is another thing to actually implement that. And though there are certainly lease options out there with no money down, they're not necessarily easy to find or to come by. So take us through that journey. How did you take the course, go through the course, and get the information and get the motivation then to go out there and actually put it into practice?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It wasn't easy, and you're certainly not looking for ads that say lease option available,
I haven't seen one yet.
And, well, we actually end up selling a lot of them on lease options. We actually did that, but then you use the term rent to own instead, right? But it was all a very new concept at the time. Most people had not heard of it. So it was about approaching owner after owner and saying, hey, if I give you your full asking price, and the market at the time was not hot, it was pretty slow, and people weren't accustomed to getting the full asking price. I said, can we do it on terms? And then they'd say, okay, what are the terms? And then we'd talk a little bit about terms. And we just kind of slowly work them into it. But the key was, hey, I'm not coming in and asking you to reduce your price by some huge amount and give me everything for free. It's like, I'm going to meet you at your price if you can meet me on my terms. And so it was just kind of a back and forth. And through that process, they're also getting to know you. And I mean, it's just a fact that people do business with people they know, like, and trust. I mean, you hear that all the time. You hear that all the time. And so through this process of just having conversations, viewing the property, this isn't cold calling. You're showing up, you're there in person with them, right? So it's investing a lot of time because you don't have the money to invest, right? So you invest the time instead of the money until you find that seller that really wants to sell, and they really like you and they trust you, and they're like, okay, she's going to make her payments, and she's going to go forth with what she said. And we get it. She's a college student. Of course, she doesn't have the money down.
So I'm assuming you weren't going through the MLS or through a realtor. Is that right?
Yeah, there was no realtor involved in this one. We were driving neighborhoods looking for the for sale by owner signs. That's also less common these days, but they're still out there. And so that's how we found this one. And then in addition to that, we house hacked. So that term didn't exist at the time, but We
Yeah.
bought a 4-bedroom house. I say we because I was engaged at the time to the person that is now my husband. So he got to live there too, and so did my dog. So it's a we, but I was certainly the one doing the real estate stuff for the most part. But we
Mhm.
also rented out, we got a 4-bedroom house. We didn't need that big a house. So we rented out half of the house, one wing of it. It was kind of split into 2 wings, kitchen in
Mhm.
the middle. So it was perfect for a house kind of scenario. But again,
Yeah.
that term didn't exist at the time, but that's what we did. And that's how we made the mortgage payments.
Yeah, I was house hacking before the term came about as well. It's just such a low risk way to actually get into investing. And once you do your first house hack, it's like, wow, somebody else is paying this mortgage. It's like, yeah, it's the way to go there.
It is,
Well,
yeah.
how many I know it's a long time ago, but approximately how many people did you have to approach before you found the person that said, yeah, we'll do this for you?
I don't recall honestly, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
some of them won't even show you the house. And if you get in front of them and you even mention terms, a lot of them shut you down. No, I want all cash right away. But yeah, you just have to find the right one, and they're out there.
Yeah.
And this particular person, he was an investor as well, although it was his first investment, but he had bought it as an investment property. So I think he had more of an open mindset, and I think that
Hmm.
helped.
Yeah.
And that was, again, just luck of the draw that we happened to find that person. But yeah, there was a lot of people we had to go through for sure.
Yeah.
It's not a pick up the phone, get out there, meet the person, and close the deal. So,
Well, I wouldn't
and you
call
have
it
to
luck.
kind of like the house too, right?
Yeah. Well, that's always nice too. But I wouldn't call it luck of the draw. I would call it lots of hard work to find that one particular individual. So going from there, take us down the journey from that first property, that first lease option, and that first actually house hack.
So from then I realized you can really make money doing this. So obviously wanted to do more of it, but still starting a new career, family, all that kind of stuff. Kind of took it slow, but was moving a lot because when you're new into a career, you often end up chasing the jobs, wherever the
Mhm.
jobs are.
Right.
So what we did is everywhere we moved, we'd buy a house. As we moved again, we would not sell that house, and we would just keep accumulating houses that way.
Mhm.
And then and then we picked up some just for investments too, when we could talk someone into letting us come in with no money down. And of course, all that crazy 2006 to 2008 era, you could buy houses with literally nothing down, just straight from the bank, right? And
Mhm.
that's what ultimately led to the big crisis, right? But you
Mhm.
could go get a first lien loan for 75 to 80% of the property, and then you
Mhm.
could get a HELOC for the other 25%. So you
Mhm.
literally came in, and they'd even throw in your closing costs. So you could literally buy a house with nothing. And at the
Mhm.
time, the rents were covering that full mortgage.
Yeah.
So we picked up some houses that way. We did not over leverage, despite some people took out even another loan on that and
Mhm.
were really upside down. And there are a lot of people that were flipping and just counting on that the price continuing to increase. We did not get caught in that, which
Mhm.
was good. So everything was cash flowing when that bubble finally hit. We did exit quite a few properties while it was at the very height of that market. And I'd like to say it's because I'm a genius and I just knew the bubble was going to met, but it was really just timing. So my husband was looking for something to do. He was tired of working for corporate life. So he wanted to start his own business. And Massage Envy was a franchise that was new at that time. You may have heard of it, but it was brand new at the time.
What
And
is that? Yeah.
Massage Envy,
Uh-huh.
it's a massage franchise. So we
Oh,
have
okay.
2 locations now.
Uh-huh.
So and they're big. We have about 75 employees. So
Oh,
there's
wow. Okay.
lots of massage rooms in there, estheticians giving facials. It's like a big spa experience.
Mhm.
But it
Okay.
was brand new at the time, and it has like a membership model, much like a health gym.
Mhm.
So it's that same thing, but that had never been done before. So they were just coming out the door. We wanted to get into that, but we didn't have the money for it. So we're like, well,
Mhm.
let's sell some real estate. And so we happened to sell right at the top of that bubble. And how lucky was that? That was a good time to
Yeah.
cash out. Then we went into a recession and we thought, oh my God, we've got brand new business in a recession. It did fantastic. Because guess what? People are stressed out in recession, so they go get massages and they're not traveling, so they're treating themselves. So then the business is making all this money. Now we have a tax problem. And how do you solve a tax problem? you buy real estate because real
Right,
estate is you write
exactly.
off a bunch of your taxes, right? So it was a big circle. The real estate led to buying the business led to buying more real estate because we had more cash flow. We were used to living at a much lower means. We didn't need all that money, put it right back into real estate. Now that real estate is bringing us more money, we end up buying another business, brings us more money, buy more real estate, and it's just a continuous cycle.
Enlightened investors, if you haven't done so already, be sure and click that like button and also click that share so others can take advantage of the content. And finally, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our upcoming episodes. Yeah, once you can get that cycle going, it begins to work for you. And you probably spent less time door knocking on potential for sale by owners. So you've talked us through here the beginnings of this process and how timing worked for you, and you were smart enough to actually allow timing to work for you by essentially being disciplined and preventing yourself from being over leveraged, which a lot of people did not do and regretted that in 2008 through really 2014 and beyond, because that can be devastating to people. When a crash hits and you're over leveraged, you just don't leave yourself to very many options. What gave you the wisdom to realize that that was a good strategy?
I think that was just me being a chicken, really. I mean, I saw a lot of people taking out 150% loans on their properties, and it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
The value isn't there. Why are they doing this loans? Banks are a whole lot more conservative now. They won't allow those kinds of loans, but it seemed risky to me, and I just didn't want to get involved with that. I didn't want to be caught with my pants down, so to speak. But and then as more money starts coming in too, you start getting around more real estate people. There's a lot of intelligent people out there that you can get knowledge from, right? So net worth equals your network, they say all the time. So start networking with the real people. And that's when I discovered multifamily and how that's far less risky. So again, being the chicken that I was, I kind of gravitated to that. And I found that not only was it less risky, because if you have one vacancy in a single family house, you have zero income coming in, right? You have one vacancy in a 100-unit complex, you don't even feel it. So a lot less risky, and then so much more profitable and so much easier because you're turning everything over to professional property management teams. So that was the other blessing that came about from just being around those people that really knew what they were doing and were willing to mentor and teach.
Yeah, it is good to have people with wisdom around you. Of course, a lot of the reason that those people were going for those for over leveraging like that is that there are gurus out there that teach people to do that and say everything's going to be fine. Real estate never goes down; it always appreciates. So just leverage, leverage, leverage. But I'm glad you found people of wisdom who advised you not to do that. Well, take us through
I
this.
think there's partial truth to that, right?
Yeah.
Long-term trend, it always goes up, but that doesn't mean there isn't ups and downs and roller coasters along the way. So yeah, if you hold forever, it's definitely going to be more 40 years from now than it was 20 years ago, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, it's not a straight line. It's not a straight line.
And to hold it those 20 years, you have to position yourself correctly to do that.
Have to cash flow, absolutely. Positive cash flows king.
Absolutely. Well, take us through this journey from the single family to the multifamily, and how did you make that shift, and what were some of the precipitating circumstances that allowed you to do that?
Yeah, so I mean, the big why, everybody's got to have a big why if you're making a big change in your life, right? So my son Carl, of course, was the big why. I really started worrying about his future. I said, I need to scale much faster and much quicker. And you just can't do that with single family homes, especially if you are managing it all yourself. We have some wonderful tenants, but we also have some nightmare ones. I mean, everybody does. And it seems like one nightmare tenant can make up for 100 good ones, or in a negative direction, right? So just need to scale. And so I started listening to podcasts. Lots of podcasts, reading tons of books, and going to lots and lots of multifamily conferences, networking events, and listening to some of the higher respected gurus, so to speak, taking their courses, because why reinvent the wheel when there are others out there who already know what they're doing, and you can learn from them. Yes, you sometimes have to pay to play, but considering how much money people put into real estate, it can be very expensive lessons if you do it wrong. I've had some expensive lessons, but now I call them seminars, right? It's the cost of a class, right?
Yes.
Had I taken the class type of seminar instead, I may have been able to avoid some of those more expensive seminars. Yeah, so that's what we did. It's just learn a ton and then form good teams, form good partnerships, and then take action, take massive action, because it's a scary step at first, and you can get stuck in analysis paralysis pretty easily if you're not careful. And investing as limited partner in multifamily is also a good way to learn the ropes. So I did some of that where, none of the responsibilities on me, but I can peek behind the curtain and see how it's all done.
Well, Maria, you've had a lot of experiences and a lot to share. Tell us about the course that you offer and how it is that our audience can get in touch with you to take advantage of that.
Yeah, so the course is all about how to maximize your returns as a passive investor, and it's going to be offered through Legacy Academy. So you can look up Legacy Academy. It's coming out in May, and I believe that's about when this podcast is coming out. We're recording at the end of April here, right? Yes, and so it's just called Maximizing Your Returns as a passive investor. And it's all about how to select the right properties in the right markets with the right teams, and how to layer those investments so you can actually get involved in multiple apartment complexes or whatever you wish to invest in with the same pot of money. You can actually use the same pot of money multiple times. And people are like, that's not real, just like I thought about lease auctions with no money down wasn't real. But it all comes from people refinancing properties while you still hold the equity. So the property gets refinanced, you get your money back, you put it into something else. And so there's this layering component. And then it also talks about how to save a buttload on taxes while you're doing that, so you have even more money to put into that. So I show how you can take a small pot of money and make it into a giant pot of money. And I won't give the specifics on that, but there are examples in there on how to grow, $100,000 into well over $1.5 million in the course of about 15 years. So it's not a get rich overnight scheme, but it's certainly a tried and true method that people have been doing successfully for a very long period of time.
Well, an excellent course from a wise woman who's had a lot of experience. All of that information will, of course, be in our show notes. Maria, give us some examples here of, you've talked to us briefly about how the passive investor can get into this, but could you give us some specific examples
of how they can get in? So there's a lot of people out there doing syndications. That's basically where they pull a lot of investors to go buy a bigger piece of property than any of them could buy on their own. And so through Blue Vikings Capital, which is my firm, we do a lot of those. And we also specialize in helping special needs families. Since I have an autistic son, I'm very involved with that community, helping them set up nest eggs to take care of their children long term. So in addition to just regular syndications where you are getting in and out of a deal, usually in 5 to 10 years, it really depends how they're structured, we can also help you set up some forever hold type of investments. So this is where you can invest with your heart as well as your wallet for anybody who wants to get into something like this. These investments are through properties that are being built to house special needs individuals, complexes specifically for them that have services in place to help them out. And those complexes will never be sold. So you could put that in a special needs trust, or if you have just a regular child that you want to make sure is set up, you could put it in a special trust for them. So that cash flow will forever be there for them, right? So we'll still offer a, a refinance event where you can get your original capital back, but you'll hold that equity forever and continue to cash flow. So that makes us a little bit different. So you can feel good about your investment because it's helping build these communities, as well as helping set up a nest egg and a legacy for your family.
A lot of good deals going on there. Do you require accredited investors?
We do both accredited and sophisticated, but of course you need to get to know me first if you're in that sophisticated category. So then I would encourage you to set up a call with me. Let's get to know each other so I can find the right deals for you if you're not accredited.
Okay, excellent. One of the efforts that you're into, we mentioned it in the introduction, is that you purchase 100 plus hotels and do the conversion on that from the hotel to affordable housing. Tell us about those endeavors.
Yeah, so it's actually not as big an item now as it was during the height of COVID when hotels
Hmm.
were really failing, because you could pick up those hotels very inexpensively. And in areas where the cost of living was just outrageous, some of those hotels were very nice. They had great amenities, and people can have pools and gyms and all these kinds of things that you see in some of these nice hotels, but maybe they have a smaller, more of a studio or one bedroom type apartment.
Hmm.
So yeah, so then we would take some of the meeting rooms, those could be converted over to storage facilities, because you're going to probably need that if you're living in a smaller place.
Hmm.
It's amazing how nice an apartment complex it can really be when you convert a hotel, if you're converting the nice ones. We're not talking
Hmm.
about the crappy motel on the street corner with the bars on the window in the scary neighborhood, right? Nobody wants to live there. So that's kind of what that is. Now that hotels are coming back, they're pretty strong. It is much harder to find good deals
Hmm.
for that. However, there are areas where rents have just gotten so astronomically expensive that they're so desperate for affordable housing that there you can still make that work, both for the tenants and for the investors.
Yeah, there's a lot of places like that around the country, and gentrified areas in particular. And there's certainly a lot of that going on all over the country in various different places. Um, I'm just thinking of resort areas where there are some really nice hotels, but the workforce are driving hour and a half a day just to get there to be the oil of the of the communities, and they can't afford to live where they are working.
I live
Uh,
close to Disney World and Universal Studios, so we have a lot of that going on there.
yeah.
And there are also hotels there that cannot compete with those big resorts. They had a fairly nice hotel, and then these huge
Mhm.
resorts built right next to them. It's really
Yeah.
hard for them to compete. So sometimes there is an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking that I mean, first of all, we think of gentrification in cities and in urban areas, but in these resort areas, many of them are rural areas, ski resorts, and like you just mentioned, Disney World there. I can see that happening around there as well. Maria, just one last question. What was your most challenging experience in real estate, and how did you deal with that? And how'd you come through that? And what was your big lesson from that?
Well, I think it is with the first multifamily property I bought. So before we started doing syndications and investing with other people's money, we wanted to do it all with our own money, right? So we bought a couple of smaller properties, which I think everybody should do, but not everybody does. But that's where you
Mm,
learn the lessons, is when you actually do that. So we bought
right.
a 12-unit apartment complex, so not huge, not small, kind of in the middle. And I learned a big lesson about selecting your property manager, and
Hmm.
found out that property management companies often send out a really good salesperson, but they're not going to be the person that actually manages your site, even though they'll lead you to believe that.
Mm,
That was a big lesson. I was figuring out what his experience was and what he could do. And it turned out he was not going to be the person, even though he led me to believe that. So
mm,
once they took over the management of the property, they did great for about 6 months, and then everything just tanked. And
mm,
we had signed a 2-year agreement with them. And I had to figure out how to legally get out of that, under what grounds I could do that, and how to switch over to another property management company. And that is not a pretty process. Anybody who's ever switched property managers on an entire apartment complex, especially if they're not happy to go, it was to the point we couldn't even get the keys to our own units that we own, right? We had to rekey every door. It was really ugly, but I learned a lot from that. I learned how to pick a better
mm,
property manager, how to get references, how to really dive into their history, go see the properties that they're managing for other people, like really dig in and don't just go to the references they give you. Look up
mhm,
who they're managing and talk to some of the references they're not giving you, really. So that was an expensive lesson too, because when they're not running your property well, you're not making good money. And then once we got a new property manager in there, it was like night and day, like how well that
mhm,
property ran versus how it had been running. So the one thing I would have done different is do it a whole lot sooner once I figured it out, because I knew it was going to be a painful experience. I dragged my teeth. I'm like, well, maybe they'll turn it around. Maybe they'll get better.
mhm.
also about having a property manager that lives very close to your property, because their head office was about an hour from there. So our property just didn't get the kind of attention that the properties that were 10 minutes away were getting. So
Yeah.
lots of property management lessons there. I could go on, but I won't bore you with all of that. But that was a big one right there.
And property management is so important to the success of any property. Well, Maria, we're out of time, but it has just been delightful. So wonderful to meet you today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge and experiences with our audience today.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate you having me on.
Enlightened investors, don't go yet. I have just a couple of quick requests. You know the drill. Like, share, and subscribe. But we also need your help to build our audience, so please go to your favorite podcast app and leave us a 5-star rating and review. I'll be most grateful. Until next time, prosper and live abundantly.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Investing Abundance, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, a company working for passionate professionals like you to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steve Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steve Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. For resources to develop your financial independence, connect with us at stevetalker.com.